Roy. The last 3 months have been a very difficult period for the VEU program, as the coronavirus has resulted in a number of restrictions that has led to a suspension of the major VEU activities in the residential sector. As I'm sure everyone knows, a suspension was lifted last night and residential activities can now recommence. The ESC has been planning for resumption, and last night we released our guidance on our expectations and requirements for businesses to recommence activities. You'll hear more about these requirements today as we work through the agenda. Today's forum will be in two parts. Firstly, we have a presentation or plenary session where I'll give an update of the program performance in 2020 to date. Then Emma Jacobs from the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning will say a few words on the status of the program and the lifting of the suspension. Then we have Karen O'Connor from Sustainability Victoria, who will give a presentation on an assessment tool that SV have developed. We will then finish the morning session with questions from participants. We have allowed plenty of time, 15 to 20 minutes for questions from this plenary session. And these can be forwarded via Slido, and I'll show the instructions for Slido shortly, and they've just been on the screen for 2 or 3 minutes beforehand as well. Later today, we'll conduct two workshops. The first, commencing at 1 p.m, will focus on the activities of accredited persons, and the second, commencing at 2:30, will focus on energy retailers. The workshops are being held to provide program participants with an opportunity to give us feedback on how the coronavirus pandemic is impacting your business, the challenges you're facing, and what the Commission can do to provide support going forward. We will look for ways to consider and incorporate your feedback into the way we work, our work priorities for the year and in making decisions. Thanks, Roy. Can we change slide? Right. The instructions to log on to Slido via a web browser or downloading the phone app are on the screen. Ben Curnow will be our question moderator for the session. And can you give us a wave, Ben, if you're on? Anyway, we'll get to meet Ben later on. If you're not comfortable with using Slido or unable to access Slido, please post your questions in the chat function in Zoom that's located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Ben will read out the questions during the Q&A session at the end of the plenary session. We'd also appreciate your participants asking questions during this plenary session rather than the workshops, as the intention of the workshops is to allow participants to raise matters for the Commission to take away and to consider. Okay, so we'll now go on to my slide. Thanks, Roy. I'll first discuss our activities for the last 6 months at the Commission. Then I'll discuss what the next 12 months may look like. And then I'll finish by just sharing some program stats, including what's occurred over the last 6 months and also focusing on the last 3 months. Thanks, Roy. In our registry area, up until 31st of March, it was very much business as usual, with certificate creation being uploaded. Things changed for most APs when the coronavirus restrictions commenced and a number of predominantly residential activities were suspended. In response, the ESC determined to change our processes to facilitate a faster turnaround of certificate validations. We looked at our processes and requirements and sought feedback on areas to streamline, notably the timing requirement of decommissioning invoices. We also allocated more staff to our validation checks and changed the way we deal with escalated batches. Firstly, splitting batches when an issue was identified, and then we utilised our audit team to directly investigate and review problematic claims. Since April, we have seen an improvement in processing times, where on average 35% of batches have been processed with target timeframes. We implemented these changes to assist APs and work through the pending certificate queue, fully expecting we would quickly work through the queue. What we found, however, was that the number of creations has been higher than expected and has averaged in excess of 100,000 certificates per week since the 1st of April, which I think is very good news. And finally, in the registry area, I remind APs that the 30 June cut-off date for 2019 active is approaching, and any outstanding 2019 principal regulation activities need to be created by this date. Now I'll go on to compliance. Thanks, Roy. As always, our administration focus has been to ensure the integrity of the VEU program is maintained. We spent significant time assessing problematic claims. As I noted earlier, we've increased our assessments of pending claims and also increased the number of desktop reviews of information that we require to support these claims. And we've continued our phone auditing program. One area that ceased was our field audit program, and we're making preparations to commence this program shortly. Part of these preparations is to finalise our field audit coronavirus safe plans that will supplement our site inspection risk assessment. A continued focus of the upcoming field audit program will be on regional areas. Thanks, Roy. Can you change to the next slide? In 2020, prior to the restrictions, we conducted audits at 74 regional sites, and coupled with findings from top audits, these indicate there are some ongoing issues in the regional areas that have APs having to surrender due to eligible baseline. Someone's got their mic on there, I think. When field audits recommence, we will conduct visits across state and the metro.
Right, so I can put you on speakerphone right now so you can listen to what's being said, if that's going to be any help.
The results of the audit work we have carried out, Roy, can we change the slide?
Sorry, Jeff, just to interrupt. We're having a technical issue where people aren't being able to emit because there's a limit.
Yeah.
We are trying to resolve the issue. Can we ask people who have, I guess, colleagues who are unable to log in, perhaps ask them to try again in about 5 minutes? Apologies for this.
Did everyone hear that?
Yes.
Yeah, we're just having difficulty with, we've reached our limit for attendees, and some people can't be admitted. So if people can just wait online and try to gain entry in about 5 minutes. If you can
and this will be recorded, so hopefully, for those who are unable to make it, apologies.
Yeah, well, we'll give our apologies. So if people are online and some of their colleagues are trying to get in, can you just pass that message on that apparently we've reached our Zoom limit. Okay. All right, so back to the compliance. Obviously we've got a technical glitch which we're working through. Just so back to compliance, the results of our audit work we have carried out over the last few months has also identified a number of other compliance concerns. We found some issues with the 21B activity, with APs not having the required evidence for claims. We are concerned that when we RFI some APs, they don't appear to readily have the required information available, which is leading the Commission to question their record-keeping practices. We've also found problems with photos where there has been inconsistent geotagging and instances of the wrong photos for the installation being uploaded. In addition, we have found some instances of disconnected phone numbers for consumers and inconsistent consumer information on assignment forms. We ask AP to take particular attention to ensure the information they upload to claim VEECs is checked and is correct before the claims are sent to the Commission, and that they are all required information to support those claims, because you need to have those, because we will ask for the information, and we have been doing that of recent times. We've completed a number of investigations over the period, and one has resulted in our commissioners applying enforcement action against AP. Commissioners also decided that the extent of the non-compliance was such that they requested the matter be referred to the police. Additionally, where the non-compliance was done by an electrician, commissioners requested the electrician be referred to Energy Safe Victoria. The recent decision by our commissioners held a renewed focus on enforcement at the ESC, and the expectation is that now more VEU non-compliance matters will be addressed at an earlier stage by our Commission. So the message is clear. APs need to assure themselves that the VEECs they claim are compliant, and they need to assure themselves that third parties that they contract are carrying out installations compliantly. Because if they are not, it will be the AP who took enforcement action that will be taken. In relation to relevant entity matters, during the period we received submissions from energy retailers that detail their 2019 compliance year certificate surrender obligations. I thank the energy retailers for their submissions and their VEEC surrenders. The EC is now working through this information to confirm each energy retailer has met its obligations. The most time-consuming part of our review is the reconciliation of exempt sites that have been claimed, and currently this review is progressing very, very well. Finally, I want to again emphasise participants' Australian consumer law obligations. I'm concerned with the resumption of residential activities from yesterday that the lead generators and installers may push the envelope and breach their obligations. In 2020, we have met with Consumer Affairs Victoria on a number of occasions to discuss some of the complaints received, including those that have gone directly to the Minister of Energy. CAV have confirmed that some of the marketing actions of VEU participants may breach the ACL, and these participants risk actions. So I ask again APs to ensure their lead generators and installers that they use are aware of their obligations and the consequences they may face. Now on to project-based assessments. Thanks, Roy. There's been continued activity in the PBA space with over 260 projects being submitted since the introduction of this activity in 2017. Of these, about 250 have progressed to an approved status, with about 40 of these approved this year. The number of submissions has increased year on year up until the end of 2019, with a slow occurring in the last couple of months. So far in 2020, about 38 projects have been submitted. Of the current active projects, 245 have been approved to the scoping or project plan stage. A further 8 are currently incomplete and do not meet the rules for the ESC to progress them. You'll see from the slide there have been 16 businesses accredited to complete the PBA activities, and there have been 20 multi-site projects submitted. The interactions between PBA proponents, APs and ESC staff has been great. We're always available to take calls and queries from APs to assist their understanding of the PBA rules and regulations. As we all know, the rules and regulations are set by government and the department and not the ESC. The ESC is merely the administrator of those rules. On occasion, some APs and project proponents have a different view on the interpretation and intent of those rules, and this is great. We welcome those discussions, and we will always investigate any concern and seek clarification of those matters. We also occasionally receive queries on specific project matters, including some on-project elements that we have determined are not allowed under the rules. We will continue to engage with APs and the department on these matters, and while most APs see these arrangements as instructive and educative, the ESC cannot advise on projects. The onus is on the participants to understand the rules and regulations and to make their own assessments and decisions. Additionally, for PBA activities, the rules are set up with several approval touchpoints for the ESC to review projects. These touchpoints allow APs to provide information on their projects. The better the quality of that information, the more likely projects will move smoothly to the VEU creation stage. Now onto a specific product matter. Roy, can you change the slide, thanks? In recent months, we have experienced a significant increase in the submission of lighting product applications, resulting in a rise in processing times for everyone. We have assessed all of our product installation data and compared this to products that have been approved, and we have found that the majority of lighting products approved by the ESC in the last 12 months were never installed under the VEU program. As a result, we are assessing the introduction of a new product application prioritisation system for all lighting categories. The intention of the new proposed system is to prioritise products that are intended for use under the VEU program. Thanks, Roy. The system will be risk-based and will be dependent on the history of product applications versus actual installation. We propose to risk rate both the product applicant as well as the nominating AP. The number of times products have been applied for and then nominated and never installed under the VEU program will affect risk ratings. The objective of the proposed new system is to achieve faster processing times for products that are generally intended for use in the VEU program. I wish to point out that most APs are using a high percentage of products they nominate, so the vast majority of APs will have no limits on their nominations. So what will the proposed risk rating system look like? Thanks, Roy. For product applicants, we propose the following. If the percentage of lighting products is between 60 and 100% installed, there's no change. If it's between 30 and 59, there'll be 7 days added to the usual processing time. If it's between 1 and 39%, an extra 21 days. And if no products have been installed, there'll be an increase of 40 days. Now for APs nominating products, Roy, if we can change the slide. If you're an AP nominating products and between 60 and 100% have been installed, there'll be no limit on nominations. If between 30 and 59% have been installed, there'll be a limit of 10 per month. If they're between 1 and 29%, there'll be a limit of 5 per month. And if none have been installed, there'll be a limit, there'll be none allowed for a period of time. We're saying next month here, but we'll determine that time amount. So we're looking forward to improving the timing of VEU lighting product approvals by implementing this particular change. Thanks, Roy. Now we'll go on to some project updates that have occurred during the period. So during the last period, we've completed a deal of work to review a number of areas and improve our administration and guidance. We've released program updates that clarify our requirements for undertaking lighting activities and in-home display activities. We've also updated our guides for water heating, space heating and cooling product applications, recycling invoice requirements, and Activity 34J6 upgrade requirements. And we provided guidance on correctly selecting Activity 34 asset lifetime references. We also worked through the re-accreditation of the retrofitting for energy and water efficiency course, and we released our first VEU newsletter, and our next newsletter is due for release in July. Finally, we have updated our decision-making framework, and we have recently published that on our website. The website page sets out our decision-making framework and decisions, and we have made in the program since the 1st of January 2019, and the framework is designed to support a culture of good decision-making in the VEU program. I encourage participants to review the new page at your time. Thanks, Roy. Now I want to say a few words on what I see what's in store for the next 12 months. One of the key focus areas will be how we'll be administering the program in a COVID-19 world. As we look to recommence residential activities, as restrictions are hopefully progressively being lifted, we all need to be aware of the environment and circumstances we'll be working in. DELC has released the COVID-19 Safe Plan Guideline to assist VEU participants, and the ESC has released our own complementary guidance for APs. The ESC guidance is framed to give the Commission assurance that participants have developed coronavirus plans and have educated their employees and assure their contractors and third-party lead generators have implemented appropriate plans, can appropriately control risk, and can also appropriately use and have appropriate coronavirus safety equipment. As part of risk mitigation, we're also questioning whether APs need to use door-to-door sales or whether other channels are more appropriate in the current circumstances. The purpose of the ESC guidance is to ensure the risks are minimised for both VEU participants and consumers, and that we all are in a position to respond effectively should an issue arise. This includes the ESC continuing and regularly emphasising the need for vigilance in participants' day-to-day activities. As circumstances change, we will continue to update our guidance. We also welcome feedback on and updates on what is happening out in the field, what you are doing and what you are seeing. As I noted previously, the ESC will be recommencing field and site audits and focusing on regional centres. And over the next 12 months, if any regulations are required to be implemented, the ESC will be at the ready to bring these online. Thanks, Roy. Over the next 12 months, we will also be looking to adapt and strengthen our risk-based compliance framework. It appears that in 2021, the VEU program will effectively be similar to what it currently is. That being the case, we will continue to pursue improvements to the way we administer the VEU program. We have ideas of focus areas for improvement, and we encourage participants to highlight areas for review. We'll continue to work with you all in this regard. We will prepare as much as we can for all regulatory changes, and we have plans for specific projects based on the previous DELC proposals. And these projects will be commenced at the required time. These projects include a review of our fee structure, requirements for large energy users, and any updates in the lighting area, as well as preparing for any new VEU activities as the case may be. One project that is continuing and will continue for the next 12 months is the development of our new IT system on the Microsoft Dynamics 365 platform. The project is going slower than expected, and we are still about 6 months away from implementation. Look, feel and workflows of the new system will be different to what we have now, and the transition to the new system will involve detailed training for all users. We will be reaching out to participants as the IT development progresses in the second half of the year. Finally, we have commenced a number of internal initiatives to make better use of the program data that we've collected over the years. specifically in informing our risk-based processes. Going forward, we will seek to make further real-time use of data to aid our decision-making, and we will also be looking to our enhanced analytics capability of our new IT system and utilising that capability. Okay, I'll now just move on to give a bit of an update of scheme statistics. So I'll just quickly go through these over the next couple of minutes. So since 2009, total activities are around 4.8 million, with 4.6 million in residential areas. Total certificates created about 66 million. Total certificates registered of about 60.5 million. Thanks, Roy. The 2020 target is 6.5 million certificates, and currently there have been 7.4 million certificates created. Of those, 6.6 million have been registered. So we're already in excess in registered certificates for the 2020 target. 570,000 products have been approved, and there have been about 5,000 installers who are currently approved in the scheme. Thanks, Roy. This table shows the number of installations and VECs created over the last 18 months, with on the right-hand side a focus of 2020. We've got the top 10 or so activity categories there. Lighting, the upgrades there, which is part 21A, it's been the predominant, and nearly 1 million certificates also in 2020 for activity 34, building-based lighting. We've also had significant creations in water heating, and we've also seen some creations in the public lighting space. So across the board for 2020, there have been quite a number of activities have had certificates created. Thanks, Roy. This is what we term our run rate chart we've been showing for the last 10 or so years. On this chart, we've got the targets and the blue line, and on the black line, we've got the number of registered certificates. Also, the green vertical bars are the weekly creations. Just want to sort of point out that in around the April-May timeframe, there was a week where we had, this is April 2020, where we had a record spike of number of certificates registered for about 420,000, which was about 130, 140,000 higher than our previous peak, which was back in 2012. And this is a direct result of the changes we made to our validations process that I mentioned earlier. So just like to congratulate the VEU staff who worked really well under those change processes to sort of register all those certificates during that week. Thanks, Roy. Now I've got a series of about 4 or 5 charts which show the performance of the major activities and also the suspended activities over the last 18 months, but with a focus on the last 3 to 6 months. Part 21A, we can see that from March this year, there's been a progressive reduction. Thanks, Roy. Similarly, for activity 21A, since March, there's been a significant reduction as a result of the suspension. Thanks, Roy. Activity 15, weather sealing. We actually had a huge spike in March of creations of around 1,000. You can't see the right-hand side of the screen here, but we've seen a significant reduction as the suspension has gone. Thanks, Roy. For activity 17, shower roses, in March, April and May, creations were fairly high and they've dropped away now in June. Thanks, Roy. For activity 30, IHDs, we've had a spike in March and similarly with it being suspended, it's dropped away. Thanks, Roy. Now for water heating, the opposite has occurred. Since March and the suspension of residential activities, there's been a steady increase. Peaking in May at around 25,000 certificates. For March, the statistics are only up to the 15th. Sorry, for June, it's only up to the 15th of June. Thanks, Roy. And similarly for activity 34, building-based lighting, there's been a progressive increase since the end of March. And so in May, we've increased from 200,000 certificates to about 250,000 certificates that were created in May. Thanks, Roy. And now we'll go to the next slide. This slide is just a conglomeration addition of all the previous slides. We'll go into the next one. And just finally, I'll give you some audit and stakeholder contact stats. 146 audits over the period, field audits, 393 desktop audits over the period. Nearly 42,000 certificates have been surrendered by participants as a result of investigations and the enforcement action we've taken. We've responded to 1,600 queries, about 620 from AP, 650 from consumers, and we've had 130, 140 complaints, resolved about 137 complaints. We're still receiving complaints about lead generators, have a number of complaints about product failures, and there's also complaints that we've resolved in relation to installers damaging items at consumer sites. So that's my presentation there. I'm sure that's generated a bit of thought and discussion amongst the participants. So I look forward to answering queries and questions later on this morning. So thanks for your attention for my presentation. I'll now call on Emma Jacobs from the department to give an overview of the scheme from the department's perspective. Thanks. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Jeff. Roy, are you going to be putting up the slides or should I share them?
Oh, you can share them, Emma.
Okay, bear with me for a second.
Yeah, so there are share screen down the bottom. You do click on it and do the screen and you can share them.
Okay, bear with me for a second, everybody. Are people seeing that in presentation mode now? Yes, hopefully you are. Yes? No?
Yes.
All good.
Great. Okay, so look, I guess I just wanted to give a quick run through over what's happened in the program from a policy perspective over the last month. And it's been a relatively busy month for us. So at the start of the month, as most of you will be aware, the Minister set the effective target for 2021 at 6.5 million certificates. Now that is, it's effectively this, for those of you who've been in the scheme, that's effectively the same way the Minister set the target in 2014 for the 2015 target. There isn't a target set in legislation, but instead the Minister is setting the greenhouse gas reduction rate, which is the number that determines how many certificates the energy retailers need to buy. So by setting that number at a rate that will mean the energy retailers will need to buy 6.5 million certificates in 2021, we're ensuring there's ongoing demand for certificates and the continued to support the continued operation of the scheme market. And that was something that we felt was really important, to continue that ongoing demand to support the market for the program. We very much watch those forward contracts and market trends, and know that a lot of certificates are sold sort of 18 months in advance. So being able to give people a sufficient runway of that target, whilst the government took more time to consider the implications of coronavirus and the suspension and the economic recovery on what the target should be for 2022 to 2025. So setting effective, using the effective target setting mechanism, it gave us that additional time. The Minister also, as part of the letter that was sent out on the 2nd of June, the Minister also confirmed there won't be any changes to the emissions factor until the 30th of June 2021. So and that there will be minimal other changes. There will continue to be changes to the activities, and we will be resolving the consultation, the lighting issues paper consultation, which I'll touch on later. But there won't be, we won't be doing the rapid change to the emissions factor, and there'll be no change at all until 2020, the middle of next year. So in terms of what will happen for the remaining decisions that are to be made, the target, so the headline number is obviously the targets for 2022 to 2025. These will still need to be set in regulation, and the government is committed to doing that before the end of this year. And they'll also address, as the slide says, the full range of proposals. So the key thing there is that the outstanding questions around the targets themselves, how we treat large energy users, so the proposed revision for exempting the largest energy users in Victoria, changes to the shortfall penalty, and as I noted, changes to the emissions factor will all be considered as part of that the package that will be decided before the end of the year. So none of those changes have been cancelled. The final decision has just been delayed. And as I touched on, this two-stage target setting process allows us to provide the government more comprehensive advice around what the impacts of coronavirus and the suspension in the economic recovery will be, and how the target can best play a role in the economic recovery. There's certainly recognise that energy efficiency is a really important tool for job creation and boosting economic growth and helping people reduce the cost of living. So that's certainly something that we're really keen to have the target play an important, and the program play an important part in. And by delaying the target setting, that gives us an opportunity to ensure that the target is the most ambitious it can be, with and meeting those economic recovery goals that we'd all like to see the program create in terms of job creation and savings delivery. Oh, I didn't realise I had a second slide. I've kind of been talking to my first slide. Just to touch on some of the things we've said, there will be no changes to the emissions factor. The large energy users changes, again, that decision will be happening as part of the broader package. That's one where for those of you who aren't familiar, we had proposed that from 2022, large energy users would either need to have implemented an energy management system, or they'd be subject to the fees for the Victorian Energy Upgrades program. So that gave, when we were planning for an announcement in May, that would have given large energy users at least 18 months notice to implement an energy management system. That's certainly something we'll have to, as the decision gets delayed, we'll have to revise those timings. But we're certainly committed to resolving that issue, cleaning up some of the known issues with the current exemption for large energy users, making it more user-friendly, and supporting our large energy users to improve their energy efficiency going forward. Already touched on the shortfall penalty. We're also doing a whole lot of work around new activities. So there will be consultations to come very shortly on a whole range of new activities, retrofitting cool rooms to be more energy efficient, insulating gas pipes, electrifying gas boilers, energy management information systems for commercial buildings, smart thermostats, and in medium scale solar under the VEU program. So there's a whole range of activities that you should expect to see consultation on this year. We're really keen to continue to expand the range of activities under the program, and all that work has been happening in the background whilst we've been trying to resolve some of the other major consultation policy topics, including setting the targets and resolving the suspension. So we are, one of the major issues, as you I'm sure are all aware, that we're working on a resolution to, is our consultation on lighting. So that will be coming forward shortly, and so we consulted back in between December and February this year. We consulted on the proposed changes to the lighting phase out. We had submissions from 49 different stakeholders, which ran the full gamut of views, from lighting is already non-additional to lighting should be retained for 5+ years to come. So that feedback was really interesting. I don't know how many of you can see my dog just trying to get into this meeting room. Life just happens when we're all working from home, but that's okay. So since then, coronavirus has certainly led to significant changes, and we're very much aware that residential lighting activities have had one of the biggest impacts of the temporary suspension, and there's a need for the program to provide business certainty as soon as possible, so that businesses who have been impacted by that suspension can recover and understand the implications for their business going forward. So we are very much working towards getting an announcement on that very shortly. So the approach to that will include firstly, it'll be a technology specific approach. We don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach for lighting. Different lighting technologies have different economic rationales, different replacement approaches, and that sort of thing. And so we will be reviewing it lighting technology by lighting technology, and I guess installation space by installation space. And we will be balancing the need for having activities which create jobs and support energy savings, and the need for businesses to transition out of activities they have been delivering, with the issues of additionality, and how the program, if the program is continuing to focus on activities which are not as additional as other activities, then potentially we're artificially lowering the certificate price and keeping out other activities which could be driven beyond business as usual. So we do definitely need to weigh up those competing concerns, and that decision is likely to occur in the next month. So do keep an eye out. The information will be on the Engage Victoria website, or we'll send it out to everyone who's subscribed on the DELP mailing list. So as you will probably all have seen late yesterday afternoon or this morning, we have announced the reinstatement of the activities which have been suspended. So those activities were suspended from the 1st of April. That was incandescent lighting, low flow shower roses, weather sealing, and in-home displays. Those activities were all, the nature of them was that they were all high volume residential activities. So when we looked at data around activities that were where installers were going to multiple houses in a single day, and therefore significantly increasing the the risk of transmission of COVID. And the nature of the suspension, we moved beyond what was the general guidance for activities that were happening in the general public. You could have always had a tradesman come to your house and install light globes under the rules of the suspension. The nature of a government program does mean that there's a higher expectation for community protection. So there are activities that that individuals can do off their own bat, that there isn't the social license for a government program to incentivise that activity during a pandemic. There's an expectation that government will drive best practice, and we do that through a whole range of things, including requiring electricians and specific requirements for how products are installed and that sort of thing. And the suspension is another example where, because this is happening under the auspices of a government program, we had gone further than the rules for general society to say we want Victorian Energy Upgrades to be playing a strong role in protecting the public. And now, as we open up, we can say, okay, we can open up safely, but we still need to be playing that role where we are having best practice behaviour. And that's where the COVID Safe Plan comes in. And I hope you've all seen the material that was sent out yesterday. If you haven't, feel free to contact us and have a chat through it. So certainly the key risk to manage again is the risk of transmission, and that's partly why we've said unsolicited visits are not recommended. We do want to manage a risk where someone who is self-isolating may get someone knock on their door and they're bored of staying home, and so they let someone in, and then that the person who's spoken to them becomes an unwitting spreader of COVID. So it is important that you consider for your business how you're going to implement your own COVID safe plan and how you can comply with the guidance that has been released on health, hygiene, physical distancing, protecting workers and the community. And that guidance that has been released has been informed by advice from DHHS and WorkSafe. Certainly it's important for every business to be looking at what's on the WorkSafe website around how they can comply with OH&S guidelines more broadly. There's certainly compliance with workplace health and safety requirements is a requirement of the VEU scheme, and WorkSafe has a whole lot of material around how you can protect your workers and ensure that they're not dangerously exposed to COVID. And so I'd encourage everyone to look at that COVID Safe Plan material and the material that's available more broadly as you think about how you're recommencing your activities. And I guess, so the other thing that I would flag is the government has released a series of LGAs where there's a higher risk of transmission and has suggested a higher level of lockdown within those LGAs. We strongly encourage everyone to be responsive to that framework and to monitor the government advice as it evolves. And I guess the only other thing that is that I guess this is both APs, lead generators, everyone in the scheme. It's in all of our interests to ensure that we are meeting community expectations around managing COVID, and that we're doing that in a way that doesn't lead to transmission of the virus and or significant community complaints. We are in a situation where the government is very concerned that there could be a second wave, as you will have seen from all of the advice that's coming out from the Premier. It is all of our responsibility to monitor that and be responsive to that, make sure any lead generators or subcontractors that we're working with are responsive to that and aware of that and complying with that. Because if we can't get community transmission of COVID under control, and if the scheme is, and the VEU program is having a risk of transmission, we will have to suspend these activities again. So, and just like the Premier's been saying, we may have to have additional lockdown measures. So we're just a small part of the work, the broader work that the Victorian government is doing, but it is on all of our backs to continue to not be complacent about COVID. Now we've resumed these activities, and as we roll back restrictions, we want everyone to still be playing an important role in the Victorian community in terms of managing risks and reducing transmission. So next steps, this is probably going slightly over my 10 minutes. DELP will be continuing to monitor the coronavirus situation, and we will be continuing to provide you updated advice. The lighting issues paper is certainly the next cab off the rank in terms of announcements to come from the policy area, followed by consultation on new activities, and then the resolution of the package for the 2022 to 2025 targets. You can certainly contact us if you've got any questions at energy.upgrades@delp.vic.gov.au. You can also, if you go to the Contact Us page on our website, which, apologies, I haven't got the link there, or you can subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you do get any alerts that come out. If you're listening to this and you do not receive alerts from DELP when policy announcements come through, I recommend just flick an email to energy.upgrades with the relevant contact details, and we can add you to that list. We do want to make sure there will be several key announcements coming out over the next few months, and I'd strongly encourage everyone to make sure they're on the list. That's all from me. Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Emma.
How do I stop sharing? There we go.
Okay. So thanks for that, Emma, and I'll now sort of invite Kyron O'Connor to give us an overview of this tool that Sustainability Victoria have developed.
Thank you, Roy. Can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, I'll just go into... Yeah, it's showing it all good?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, look, thank you today for opportunity to speak. So I'll speak about the energy upgrades tool we have developed here at Sustainability Victoria and how we can help accredited providers when you're looking at specific energy upgrades. So very quickly, why did we build the tool? So we got quite a lot of insight, and that would be data, when we ran a program called the Boosting Business Productivity Program, essentially an audit program where we audited, well, sorry, we had auditors go through 225 businesses, and that has led to us having a lot of data around the common efficiency opportunities, the savings you would attribute to them opportunities, not just obviously in dollar values, but also in energy consumption values. And using that, we've been able to calculate the amount of weeks that would be attributed to these savings, and then put it all into a tool. So when a business, a consulting equipment supplier, or today we're talking about accredited providers, you can use this simple tool to show you what type of incentive is out there. It'll also show you what type of grants are out there. As you know, there's lots of different grants for lots of different industries. So we've tried to bring it all into one package and particularly around the grants. We update the tool on a daily basis if a grant changes, because some of them have very short windows and not many people are aware of them, so we try and keep it as up to date as possible. But it's simply bringing it all together also with the finance options that are out there and available, that then when you're an accredited provider you can look through it, or you can use it with a prospective client to show them the return on investment and the impact the incentive or grant would have on it. So probably spoke a little bit there, why use the tool. So if you have a project in mind, you would use the tool, find the grants and incentives available, their impact on the return on investment, but also then go into the specific finance options available. And a lot of businesses aren't aware that there's quite a few options out there available for them when they're looking at energy upgrades, even if they bank with some of the banks that are offering these specific options. So it's all there. But we also have another avenue for the tool. So if there isn't a specific project in mind, you can go through the tool, find the common energy upgrade opportunities for the industry. So by clicking on a type of industry, you'll be able to see the top 5 or top 6 common opportunities that are seen within that industry. And that's going back to all the data we have behind it. And then, you know, it gives you an opportunity as an accredited provider to say, okay, there's these opportunities within that industry, and what would the savings be attributed to that if there's grants, but more particularly the VEU. So the tool itself, I won't do a live demonstration because we've done it before and it crashes, particularly when you have this amount of people and you're doing it on a video call. So I'll just use screenshots, but the link is above to the tool and it's open for anyone to use. So it's quite a simple, intuitive tool. The first thing you will be asked is, are you a business or a local government? And the reason for that is we have the audit data for businesses, but we also have a lot of audit data for local government, and that would go into the building type. And then there's follow-on questions I won't show at the moment, but they cover things like what's your postcode, and that kind is attributed to, if you're looking at specific finance options, it's only in certain postcodes or councils. What's the size of the business? Is it an SME? Again, there's some grants that are only for certain size of businesses. And sorry, it's hard for me to see something. Oh yeah, sorry. And particularly what type of industry you are, and that's done by ANZIC classes. And the reason we're picking industries is the common opportunities for that industry in the back end. And lastly, what's your energy spend? Then you will come to one page before this, which will ask you, have you an energy upgrade project in mind or not? If you say yes, you will land on this page where you put in the details of that energy upgrade, and you'll have project category. So I picked heat recovery here just to have one, but you have a whole list of them. Solar will be there, LED will be there, refrigeration, so quite a long list, and you put in the project cost, its indicative savings in consumption and dollar figures, and then you would press yes. That will bring you then to the grant and incentives page. So that's if you've done yes. If you go down the avenue of no, so you haven't got an energy upgrade project in mind or at hand, then you will come to this, the common opportunities. You have a drop down here again of the industries, and you would pick one, and then you start to see all the common opportunities for them industries. So it's quite a good place to come if you're just wanting to see what are the opportunities out there within these industries. So here you have variable speed drive, just for instance, and you can select the project and bring you again onto the grants and incentives page, which I will get to next. But here it just shows you the types you would have. Then you will come to, and I guess this is a crucial page, the grant and incentives page. So for the one I've chosen here, there is no grant available at the moment, but if there was a grant, it will show it along with the VEU, if the VEU is applicable. Here you have 30%. Now that's based on, again, what you've put in, or if you've picked one of them common opportunities. So we've looked at the energy consumption savings, and we've calculated the amount of weeks with the ESC's help, and we've attributed then a dollar figure to that. We do change the dollar figures in the back end as the VEU changes, but we're quite conservative here. So we don't want to, overinflate the amount of savings there would be. But as an accredited provider, it's a very simple way to see for a specific technology and opportunity, what is the potential for the VEU to help out. One thing I would note, and it's a strong note, we're not including the cost of measure and verification here if it is a PBA method. So we really can't put a figure on that at the moment. That's more for the AP themselves and maybe the CMVP to think about. Yeah, but for here, it's just to show what the savings would be and what impact it has on the payback. So for this project, it's roughly $40,000. And it has an outlay of about 10,000, savings. So that'll be a standard 4-year payback. But with the VEU, it brings it down to 2.7 years. And as you know, a lot of businesses have a 3-year payback. So in this instance, you know, brings it under that. So it's a very quick way to show them what's available. Then you can use the tool to go on to show what specific finance is available for a particular energy project. And it asks 2 further simple questions. One around, do you want to rent or own the equipment, you know, attributed to the project? And do you want a short or long-term agreement? And by short or long-term, we say under or over 5 years. You can click not sure on either of them, and that will let you see all of the finance options available. But obviously, if you click you just want to rent, you're only going to see options available for renting. And then that brings you to the finance options page. And you can see just here, there's only showing 5 options, but there is 7 depending. And then you can click on the links, and particularly here, operating lease finance, capital lease finance, there is discounted finance out there through the major banks coming from the CEFC. And in my interaction with businesses, very few are aware this is out there. So it's generally 0.7% off the standard rate. It's just a way of showing all the finance options that are available that might necessarily be known by a stakeholder or might necessarily be known by the accredited provider as well. And the full links through to show where, you know, where they can go and to which banks have it and which financiers, if we're talking about something like environmental upgrade finance. So very quick run through, but really it's a quick tool to show the anticipated VEU savings for a client, particularly around, I guess, technologies that are only coming to the forefront now in the PBA, or are, as Emma spoke about, are being spoken about coming on, the new technologies. It also shows any grants available and combining the two, the impact on the return on investment. And that's key, I guess, when you're with clients or you're trying to see of opportunities to bring them down to that lower payback metric. There's numerous finance options available, and we have the link there to the options. And I'm happy to send this out afterwards and take questions. But yeah, please use the tool, and any feedback on it would be most appreciated. And if you have any further questions, please just use the email below. And that's it. I just wanted to do it very quickly, quick run through. I know we're running over, and please, yeah, come back to me afterwards about the tool. We want to see everyone, sorry, excuse me, as many people using it as possible, because we feel it's a good tool and it brings a lot of things together quite easily.
Thanks, Kyron. That's great. Yeah, we just crossed 11 o'clock now, so I think we've still got the line for another 15 or so minutes. So we'll still have our 15 or 20 minute Q&A session. So we can go directly into that. I take it Emma is still online. Can't see your name there, but
Yes, I am.
you're there. So I'll now hand over to Ben, and he's got a list of questions which he'll read out, and we'll go through those and respond.
Okay, well, there's quite a few questions about the pandemic, so perhaps I'll lead off with those. And perhaps the first question is, with the significant increase in the COVID community transmissions in Victoria, what is the rationale behind opening up high volume activities at this point?
You can take that, Emma.
Yeah, of course. So look, we did revisit the need to, whether we needed to extend the suspension at this point in time. Whilst the government has delayed some of the lifting of activities that was due to happen on the 22nd of June, most notably the expansion to 50 patrons in cafes and restaurants. The advice that we've received from DHHS is that it's reasonable to have this activity, the suspended activities occurring That said, this is an evolving situation. I think that the events over the weekend demonstrate that. We had been working towards a resumption, and the advice we've got was sort of sensible to continue with that, but I think that we are continuing to closely monitor that, and if the situation continues to escalate, we may have to revisit that advice. Is there anything else you want to add, Jack?
Thanks. Look, I just underlines that the all participants in the program need to have the correct processes and procedures in place and need to use, or, you know, if we need to suspend again, we will. Just to have their COVID safe plans, do your risk assessments, and make sure that all your contractors and lead generators use them. Okay, so thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Okay, I might move on to the next question then. This is also about, well, it's about door knocking. Why is the ESC only encouraging APs not to use door knocking? Given that the clear and considerable risks around public perception, why aren't you just stopping it outright?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty good question. And I suppose the simple answer is that the ESC basically doesn't have the power to outright refuse door knocking. So, you know, we're saying that, you know, we're strongly encouraging other channels to take precedence. But so that, in essence, that's the answer. We don't have the direct power to say that it can't continue.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, next question. When will we know how the emissions factor change will be treated for long-range PBA projects? Stakeholders need some certainty for business cases.
Yeah, of course. Look, that's certainly something that we have had feedback on, and we're working on providing greater clarity for that. So I guess the complete answer is the emissions factor will be announced with the broader decision on the targets before the end of this year. That said, we are looking to provide interim advice for people undertaking PBA projects so that they can have more certainty and not impact the progression of those projects.
Okay, great. Thanks, Emma. Okay, well, another question about door knocking. Will the recommended restriction on door knocking increase the use of overseas call centres? Many customers have already complained about telemarketers harassing them.
Well, I can't answer that question because I'm not aware of AP's and proponents' sort of business plans. Currently, that is part of the channel. If we're encouraging a slowdown or a cessation of door knocking, there are other areas, brochure drops, leaflet drops, but also sort of telephone calls, and, you know, inbound and outbound telephone calls are channels. So overseas call centres, again, we don't have any powers in that particular area. There are specific ACL rules and regulations and ACMA regulations with respect to telesales, and so they need to be adhered to. So potentially yes, but I couldn't give a definitive answer to the question.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Jeff. Now a question about products, and not really about what you've specifically spoken about today, but why do you still have automatic withdrawal of product applications after 40 days without a response? This seems to create some waste in processing time on both sides.
Is Andy there?
Yeah, I might take that one, Jeff. Yeah, look, when we don't have that 40-day automatic withdrawal limit, what tends to happen is we get a build-up of applications in the system that don't go anywhere. You know, so we do get applications where people put an application in, we ask a question back, they can't answer it, and what happens is they just leave it, and these all build up in the system. So we do need to have a withdrawal of those types of products. You know, where do you draw that line? You know, we've drawn that at 40 days. That's what it is at the moment. I'm happy to hear feedback on what that limit should be. But, you know, we do need that limit somewhere, because otherwise it really just does clutter up the system. It affects our reporting and things like that. The good news is we do send out an email reminder before that happens. So really the onus is on that applicant to keep that application current.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy. Okay, now a question about the emission calculation changes. Will the emission calculation changes in June 21 be announced late in 2020 with the proposed ambitious target settings?
Yes, so the emissions announcements will be announced as the emissions factors will be announced as part of the target setting package, which will happen the second half of this year.
Okay, great. Thanks, Emma. What about lighting? When will lighting activities be phased out? These activities are business as usual.
So we will be making an announcement on the lighting phase out shortly. So keep an eye out for that one on our mailing list. That announcement will include the timing of when each of the different lighting technologies will be phased out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Emma. Now, I think the next question really is covers what you've already talked about. The emissions factors change in June 2021 require a 6-month period to change. Hence, the emission factors change won't commence till December 2021.
Sorry, my computer got a little bit. Could you repeat the question? That came
Yeah, sure.
distorted.
Can you confirm the emissions factor change in June 2021 will require a 6-month period to change? Hence, the emissions factor change won't actually commence till December 2021.
So we're intending to announce that the emissions factor changes in before December 2020, and then there'll be 6 months notice until June. A minimum of 6 months notice. We will hope we'll get the announcements of the targets package out before December, but it will be this year that we announce the emissions factor trajectory. Then people will have 6 months notice until June 2021, and the changes will happen from then.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense to me. Okay, thanks, Emma. Another question about door knocking. We've already seen APs listing job adverts for door-to-door appointment setters. How does the ESC plan to monitor this activity to ensure program integrity?
It's another good question. All the issues associated with door knockers are something that you know, we're going to be trying to monitor. We don't have a specific program to go out there and sort of see how it's going. Previously, it's through the consumer interaction with the ESC. So what we'll be doing, as I said in my presentation, we're going to be sort of emphasising requirements to the APs on a fairly regular basis. We have an existing, and I'll just remind APs, we do have an existing requirement that you need to tell us beforehand on a weekly basis what areas, if you're going to continue with the door-to-door knocking, you're going to have to tell us beforehand which areas you're going to go into. So that's going to be our first line of monitoring, and we'll be sort of, as I said, requiring that information weekly, and we'll be sort of questioning you on that if you're not providing that information and we're getting complaints. So in fact, I didn't actually mention that during my presentation, that all previous requirements with door knocking that we have instituted over the last 6 to 12 months are still applying. So that's going to be the first line of attack for monitoring the door-to-door activities.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. Now, there seems to be still some people who are saying that they are struggling to log on. So there's a few people wanting to make sure that the 100 restriction won't apply to the later sessions.
we're having a look at that, and with respect to that, I can only offer my apologies to the people, and I'm probably not speaking to them now. But what I'm suggesting, and I know that Emma's not available after this meeting, but if there's some way that we can organise those people who can't or haven't been able to listen in to this session, I'm going to be available from 11:30 to brief them on the ESC presentation today. So if we can some way get that message to those people, I'm going to be making myself available from 11:30 to 12:30 to cover the Commission issues. Then in relation to that question, been looking at some notes there, we are trying to improve the situation for this afternoon. I think there seems to be a limit of 100, I think that one of the workshops was below 100 and the other one was around about the 100. So we're hopefully going to solve the problem, and the problem may not need to be, or may not appear, but we're trying to solve that. But as I said, I want to sort of just, if we can get the word out there, those people who weren't able to be at this particular session, I will be available from 11:30 to 12:30 to discuss with them directly.
Right. And the slides from this morning's presentations, will they be made available?
Yes, the slides will be made available. And Emma, your slides will be available, will they?
Yes, they will.
And Kieran, your slides as well?
Yes, Roy has them. Yeah, available.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Now, there's actually quite a few more questions, but have we run out of time?
I think we've got a few more minutes.
Okay.
We'll just continue on. I'm happy to continue on.
Okay. All right. Well, the next question then is, with APs having restrictions placed on them for product inactivity, will this info be made public so suppliers understand lead times for sponsoring APs?
Well, we're obviously thinking through all the finities and elements of the new risk strategy framework. So that's one of the things we'll need to consider. Off the bat, I think the incentive there is for people to make a decision, and this is the product applicants to say, well, are they genuinely intending to have those products installed in the VEU scheme? So whether it's made public or we have a one-on-one discussion with those particular applicants, that's something that we're still to decide. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything, Andy?
Yeah, I guess that whether we will even be able to display that publicly or not, that could be privileged information. I'm not sure. But these are proposals at the moment, and we'll certainly consider whether we can publish things like that or not. Okay, great. Thanks, Andy. Now, there's a question here about what's more of a statement. The Minister's letter from the 2nd of June 2020 advised that little changes will occur during 2021 period. So they're suggesting that we can assume lighting will continue to the end of 2021. Is that a reasonable assumption?
So we're certainly, as the letter suggests, that we're certainly aware that the economic impacts of COVID mean that we need to be cautious with any changes we're making to the scheme. The resolution to the lighting phase out will be announced in the next month. Okay, great. Thanks, Emma. Next question. Have you increased your auditing schedule since an AP was recently found to be falsifying documents, resulting in fraudulent VIC creation?
Yeah, it's Jeff here. We obviously review our auditing program really in real time. We are aware of various sort of non-compliant areas, and we allocate resources and staff to those particular issues on those required basis. So can't answer that question directly to that particular issue, but yeah, we take all of these issues into account in setting our audit program. Lily, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I probably would want to say with respect to when our requests, our RFIs that we make, our expectation is when the activities have been installed that information is readily available. In the last few months, we've been experiencing delays with the businesses. So my expectation is that the activities occurred and the evidentiary information should be available when you upload, so that when we're performing our audits, and many of you have been subjected to an escalation in recent months with respect to your pending claims, there is an expectation that that evidentiary information is available when we request it. That's all from me.
Great. Thanks, Lorley. Now, question about PBA. The regulations define the PBA date as 6 months after the end of the operating period. Therefore, installs that happen today will be affected by the emissions factors in mid-2021. So are we able to get some certainty now on those emissions factors?
So certainly we are looking to provide some interim advice. The decision on the emissions factors is intimately bound up with the decision on the targets. So I'm not able to provide PBA participants or any participants the decision on the emissions factors. We are, however, looking to provide some interim advice for PBA participants to resolve that issue or partially address it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emma. Okay, no, we've already addressed that. Redundancy plans. What plans does the department have if a second wave of COVID occurs, which would require the targets to be reduced?
You want to handle that one, Emma?
Sorry, I am having some IT difficulties. Sure. Could you repeat that, Ben?
Certainly. What redundancy plans does the department have if a second wave of COVID occurs, which would require the targets to be reduced?
Yeah, so we certainly have, at the moment, we've been very closely monitoring certificate creation trends, and we're at about 110% of the certificates created to meet the 2020 target. So we are in a good position from a scheme perspective that we will be able to have sufficient activities and sufficient certificates available to meet the target. Obviously, it's not just a matter of creating the exact same number of certificates as the target, but having enough that there's liquidity that people are able to trade with each other and get the certificates they need. We do have a range. If there was to be a significant second wave and we went back into very severe lockdowns for an extended period of time, we would monitor that situation. There are a range of legislative options we have. That would only happen if there was a severe second wave. Obviously, we have managed to have the current lockdown, the level of activity continued at about a 25% drop in activity. Obviously, that was very uneven across different accredited providers, but those are the sorts of things we'd be monitoring if a second wave was to occur, to identify whether further legislative changes were needed.
Great, okay.
Ben, we've probably only got about 2 or 3 minutes left.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's 3 questions left. How about, will the department consider including incentives for battery storage for residential and small business?
Yeah, so we certainly, one of the areas that we looked at when we were looking at our targets for 2021 to 2025, the RIS consultation, was optimising the use of self-generation. As Victoria adds more and more solar, it's more important for people to be able to use that solar on site, manage that and shift that solar within the course of a day to get the best greenhouse outcomes and the best cost outcomes, which are the 2 priorities for the scheme. Batteries are certainly one way of doing that. There are other ways like smart hot water systems and things like that that also do that. Those smart appliances utilising solar will be the first cab off the rank that we'll be looking at in that space, but batteries are certainly part of that suite of broader technologies. That also comes into brings us to something else we've flagged for consideration as part of an ACT review that we'll be undertaking, is how the program looks at peak demand. So we, in the course of the RIS, we have flagged that we'll be undertaking a review of the VET Act to look at whether the program should incentivise addressing other things, rather than at the moment the incentives are all focused on emissions reduction. The inclusion of additional energy metrics like how activities reduce peak demand is something we will be reviewing. Batteries obviously have an important role to play in that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Emma. Perhaps one last question. Due to the high cost of generating paperwork, etc. for PBA, has the SV app considered a minimum project size? Question for...
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's something I've thought about. In essence, it hasn't. We're leaving that to the accredited provider in question to work out for themselves. I mean, personally, I think, yes, there should be a minimum, but it really depends on the technology as well, if it's worthwhile. I did look to speak to APs about trying to put some costs around the paperwork, but also the measure and verification, but it just proved it wouldn't be accurate enough to put into the tool, so we had to leave it out, and that's why I obviously said a note, we're not including M&B costs here. Or the paperwork costs. Yeah, sorry, Andy.
Yeah, sorry. Can I just add to Kieran's comment and just talk about the projects that we've seen under PBA so far are very diverse in the range and scale of what we're seeing. We are actually seeing some APs being able to still make it economically viable to do actually very small projects, and very small numbers. I can't say what those numbers are, but we're seeing really quite small PBA projects in the programme at the moment, and APs are still making those work. So what it points to is that everyone's overheads are different, and as Kieran points out, it depends on the technology and the particular situation. So it's really very difficult to put a number on that, and it's really down to each individual participant to work out what those thresholds are.
Okay,
I think
great.
we've got time for just one more question.
Okay, well, there actually is only one more question. So this is another one for Andy, I think. Following from an earlier question, is PBA forward creation going to apply future emission factors differently than deemed lighting, also with the 10 years forward creation?
That might be one for Emma, but what's the question again? What?
Yeah.
Is PBA forward creation going to apply future EFs differently than deemed lighting, which also has the 10 years effectively of forward creation?
Maybe that's one for me.
Yeah.
So the at the moment, the PBA method just has the same 1.095 emissions factor as lighting does for electricity, and the same for gas. Obviously, there's no gas-powered lighting, but yeah. Going forward, there will be different approaches, and that's one of the things I think I earlier mentioned, that there would be some interim advice. So we're certainly recognising that PBA there are some forward creation activities, and there are some annual creation activities, and different approaches may be needed to how we treat those deemed activities. That's what we'll be looking to provide to you in the interim advice that will be coming out shortly.
Okay.
Thanks, Emma. That might be a good note to finish the question and answer session. So I'll hand it back to Jeff.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Emma and Kyron, for your presentations, and thanks, Roy, and all the staff at the ESC for putting on the forum today, first virtual forum. Obviously, we've been oversubscribed, and so there's a few learnings for us there. But we've got the workshops occurring starting at 1 o'clock with the APs, and so look forward to seeing and hearing some of you at that particular session. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you this afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.